Hey guys, what's up? So today I'll be doing a top 10 favorite strategy JRPGs, my own personal favorites. Since I can't do a top 10 favorite JRPGs of all time, I've decided to go by subgenres. I already did one for turn-based and it was really hard to do that list. So since strategy RPGs are my favorite subgenre, imagine, this was brutal for me. This was brutal and so many great strategy RPGs are not gonna be here, but these are my 10 personal favorites of all time. So let's begin! Number 10. Vandal Hearts. When I did the video for my favorite turn-based JRPGs, it bothered me a lot that I didn't include Valkyria Profile, the first one, not even in the honorable mentions! Like I said in that video, there's just a lot of masterpiece JRPGs that maybe a top 10 isn't doing them any justice, but this channel is known for its top 10s, so it kinda needed to be one. Why is any of these related to Vandal Hearts being number 10, you ask? Because to be honest, other strategy RPGs could have taken its place, and sometimes I think the ones that made it could be in any order, because it's so hard to decide which one you like more. I picked Vandal Hearts over others because it far surpassed my expectations when I first played it, and I didn't include it in my video with that same name, it was just an honorable mention there. The truth is, I always rejected this game without playing it because it didn't look manga styled to me. Characters looked ugly and sprites were so unappealing. Yeah, it just looked like no thanks. When I finally decided to give it a go, it was just because I was trying to make my very first PS1 Hidden Gems video. Little did I know that I will be playing such a unique and original strategy RPG, and that it will make it all the way to number 1 in that video. Don't judge a book by its cover, they say. Well, I learned that lesson once again that day, but I also learned not to judge games by how they look. It's always better to try them at least once, cause games are meant to be played before being judged. Number 9. Ragnarok Tactics. My story with this game is not as interesting as opposed to why I like it so much. I just had a list of PSP JRPGs back then and this one was next on the list, so I tried it. I was unsure at first though, because I felt I needed to be a fan of Ragnarok Online, else I wouldn't enjoy this game. I did play that classic MMORPG back in the day, but I was never a big fan. Though as a strategy RPG lover, this one obviously caught my attention. You could customize your character and choose their job, something that back then didn't really appeal to me. However, you could also choose the route you will take and therefore the ending. I've always been a huge fan of JRPGs with different routes and tons of characters. Yeah, I wonder which game is responsible for that. The art style was the first thing that really impressed me. Both backgrounds and characters looked really detailed and beautiful. Plus, I really enjoyed how the story tried to be lighthearted when it needed to, but dark, political, and intriguing at the right time. It was such a great balance, always keeping things simple, including its gameplay, nothing convoluted, just plain and classic grid-based strategy at its best. I also really loved how the challenge started growing slowly, not forcing you to grind since the very beginning. So in the end, I got an excellent game with responsive interface, balanced gameplay, easy to understand, with different routes and endings, and likable characters. Being a fan of this masterpiece for many years now, and I finished it several times, so of course it had to be here. Number 8. Project Cross Zone. Because of Chaos Wars on the PS2, I became a fan of crossovers. Chaos was great, and had I done this video back then, it would definitely have made it to my top 10. It isn't here because several other JRPGs are much better than it in my opinion, but the thing is that I started to look for other JRPG crossovers, especially if they were strategy RPGs. I then learned of the famous Namco Cross Capcom on the PS2, which never came out of Japan. It disappointed me. I still played it several years later with an English patch, and I have to say right now, it's a damn fine honorable mention. But the first Project Cross Zone takes the place here for a few reasons. Yes, it's a bit of a sequel to Namco Cross Capcom, but only because its two protagonists are here. There are references to that game for sure, but the story focuses on so many goddamn characters that it's not necessary to play it first. I became a die-hard fan of this game because I'm also a fan of several characters that are playable here, including characters from several JRPGs that I had played before. Yes, I was the target audience for Project Cross Zone and its masterful sequel. In fact, I want to include both games here in this 8th place because I honestly can't decide which one is better, but I guess I like the first one more because you have more combos. Yep, those combos you need to execute by pressing one button while destroying the enemy's guard shield. So Monolith Soft gave me a grid-based strategy RPG with this addictive 2D battle system with tons of characters that I know, that I love, or that I grew up with. How was I not supposed to love it? Number 7. Eternal Poison. Let me tell you my story with Eternal Poison and why it's so important to me. When I rediscovered RPGs thanks to Chrono Cross when I was 20, I played some strategy RPGs, some tactics games, didn't like them, I hated them back then. That surprises you, I know, but I hated the genre. I thought they were slow, boring, complicated and too difficult. Give me back my damned regular turn-based RPGs or action. So I often stayed away from them back then. Now, I'm a fan of gothic stuff, and even back then I noticed there was barely any JRPGs with that style, almost nothing. So I went to this flea market and found a bootleg copy of this game one day. I couldn't stop staring at it. Everything screamed gothic, especially the art style. The back cover, however, was blurry and I couldn't really distinguish what kind of game it was, or if it was an RPG at all. But it was bootleg, therefore dirt cheap, so I took it home. Why not? Why the hell not? Upon starting the game up, I was mesmerized by the opening cinematic and the characters. It may not look that impressive right now, but back then it was mind-blowing. Phage, the main girl, looked sexy and gothic, while Raki the wolf looked badass and evil. I was intrigued. Then I watched the gameplay and... no, fuck! It's one of those games where you move in squares. Obviously I had really mixed feelings about it, but I prevailed. I gave it a chance just because everything else looked absolutely amazing. Well, I'm glad I put my prejudice aside, cause after the first mission I couldn't put the controller down, couldn't wait to get to the next one. Everything had been very well explained to me because I was in the mood for understanding these types of games better, just so I could see more Phage and Rocky. Later I found out the game had different protagonists and therefore different routes to follow, and you probably already know what happened. So yeah guys, this is the game that made me a die-hard fan of strategy RPGs, and that's why it's always been a big deal in this channel. Number 6. Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade. I was already a fan of Fire Emblem when I first played this one, which was the very first game in the series localized outside Japan, released overseas. The very first time non-Japanese gamers will experience the most iconic strategy RPG series ever created. This was the 7th title, so we missed the first 6 back then. It was also a prequel to Fire Emblem 6, which had come before it only in Japan. It just seemed like the more I learned about this game, the more pissed off I got. But I played it because I wanted to see what the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games were like. Because honestly, in images and random footage, they didn't really look very appealing to me. After playing the Sacred Stones, I fell in love with the graphics, the style, the simplicity, the interface, and of course the sprites. So I jumped straight to this one when I got an original copy of it. I played it in the good old GBA SP and it just looked beautiful even in that tiny screen. Who didn't fall in love with Lyn right from the start? That badass but cute and optimistic warrior with a tragic past. Often she was speaking to you, trying to explain things as if you've never touched a strategy RPG before. 10 chapters later, this Eliwood dude and his asshole compadre took over the story, but Lyn eventually came back. Besides, I ended up liking Eliwood and Hector later on. I think this game is tough and might not be ideal for beginners despite the first 10 chapters being relatively easy, but at the same time, it might precisely be because of those 10 chapters. I think it's a phenomenal introduction to the series overall, and after beating it multiple times, I can still clearly see why some people are so fond of it. Me, I'm still in love with it, and I still think it's by far the best game of the Game Boy Advance. Number 5. Valkyria Chronicles. I have a story for this game too. Just like some games in this list and in the JRPGs that surpassed my expectations video, this one also totally looked like I wasn't going to like it. I didn't care one bit about first-person shooters, World War games, or XCOM being pretty much the influence of this game. To me, it just looked like anime Call of Duty in third person. Everyone I knew, however, was trying to convince me this was different, that it was a masterpiece, blah blah blah, the same way I'm always trying to convince you nowadays that it is. So I waited for a decent price on the PS3 version, but it was always more expensive than what I wanted to pay for it. I finally did, and it wasn't the best price, but I just couldn't keep waiting. I needed to see what all the fuss was about. So I met up with this random guy from the Facebook marketplace. I even remember the place where we met. I paid him, and as soon as I took the bus back home, I was already regretting it. I had this rule of never to pay more than $10 for any JRPG that didn't look appealing to me back then, and I had paid almost $20 for this. Well, I got home, put it on my PS3, played for 2 hours, and now I'm the biggest freaking fanboy ever of the entire goddamn series! The cel-shaded graphics blew me away. The characters were different. No more kids or teenagers saving the world. Nope, adult soldiers in a friggin' war. Gameplay was nowhere near as convoluted as I thought it would be. Turn-based strategy where you could move characters at a long range. No first-person shooting in real time. Challenging, difficult, but very fair. Addictive, supreme, sublime. Valkyria Chronicles is considered one of the best video games of all time on Wikipedia. Did you know that? Well, now you do. Number 4. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. If you ask me if this 3DS version wouldn't exist, would I still be including the original in the video? Yes, I would, despite my everlasting complaints about the mission design and the balance. Original DS version is such a nightmare to go through, but totally worth it nonetheless. Ever played a game that is too hard, but because of how good it is, you come back to it over and over? Devil Survivor is that game for me. I played the original version when I had a small kiosk in a mall, selling retro games. You have no idea the shit this asshole put me through! I died on this mission, this other mission, tossed the DS, crossed my arms and put on an angry face. Maybe that's why some customers went away, they noticed my bad mood. I acted like a child, swearing I was never gonna touch the damn game ever again. 10 minutes later, I was playing it again like an idiot because there's gotta be a way to win this mission. So I died again and repeated the process several times. Sometimes I will spend the rest of the day without touching it for how pissed off I was, but at night, I just couldn't sleep because I was already developing a strategy on how to complete this or that mission. So the next day, you guessed it, rinse and repeat. It was pretty much that way until I found a way to break the gameplay, abusing some demons and characters with over-the-top skills. So I beat it and wasted no time in starting a new playthrough right away to get all the routes and endings. When I got the 3DS port, I did the same. It feels great to beat the shit out of a brutally hard game like this, but only because it's a masterpiece. So thank you, Careersoft, developers of Grow Lancer, for making Devil Goddamn Survival. Can't wait for the third one. Number 3. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Unlike many of you who fell for the big mistake Nintendo of America did with its localization, I didn't. One random dude showed up at my store one day and talked about this game, and he told me the story. It only had easy and normal modes, but because the localization team screwed up. Easy mode doesn't exist, it never did. The game only came, really, with normal and hard, disguised as easy and normal. So, because of this, Radiant Dawn had already built a reputation for being brutal, the hardest in the series, and yabba yabba yabba. But because most people didn't know the truth about it. So now they do, I think, and now you do as well. So do yourself a favor and select easy if you want to play it on normal. It's still hard though, but worth it. Do you need to play any other Fire Emblem game before this one? Yes, absolutely. The crazy, ultra rare and expensive Path of Radiance, my good fella. Radiant is a very direct sequel full of major spoilers of Radiance, and the former started to get more and more pricey some time ago. You know, I don't care for remasters because I own these two games. I somehow convinced the guy who showed up at my store to sell his copy to me for the equivalent of mere $15 US. But I want the remasters so most of you can play them without paying outrageous prices for the originals, or you could just emulate them if you can. Radiant Dawn is my number 3 because it's an incredibly well done follow-up to Path of Radiance. Often sequels do not live to the originals, and this came from a time when some of them just didn't. This game did not disappoint and only made me love the original and the series even more. So obviously number 2 is Path of Radiance. Alright, this is it, the very first Fire Emblem I ever played in my life, and here's the story. I had only met a few guys who were fans of the series, including one of the members of my role-playing group in Messenger over 10 years ago. He was such a big fan of this one. Well, I bought a GameCube one day with several games from one guy in Facebook. I really wanted to make the deal cause this Fire Emblem or whatever game was in there, so I said finally I'll play this game and see if it really is any good. Since I was still a reseller back then, I only kept the GameCube while I played this extremely addictive game that quickly topped all other grid-based strategy RPGs I had played before. So I loved it, but you already knew that. I sold the other games and the console itself, so I got my money back, made some profit, and managed to keep this one, so you could say I got it for free? Well, to rub it in your face even more, some weeks later I bought yet another GameCube with a bunch of games, including this one once again. So I sold everything and now I had 2 mint condition copies of Fire Emblem Path of Radiance technically for free. And then I sold the extra copy like an idiot for $25. Number 1. Grow Lancer, Heritage of War. I don't need to tell you why these and Path of Radiance are my 2 favorite strategy RPGs ever. I've already said my reasons why in several other videos. In fact, I get the feeling you already knew it was gonna be number 1. So instead, I'll also tell you the story on how I got this one. Cause believe me, no other video game in this list blew me away as much as this one did. But we'll get to that in a bit. Flea Market got 2 really unknown RPGs I've never seen before, this one and Radiata Stories. So I got home and I played Radiata first. I remember my brother was staying because he had recently gone through surgery. The battle theme in Radiata Stories made him laugh and hurt at the same time. So we got tired of Radiata Stories and then I put Grow Lancer Heritage of War. Back then I knew nothing about the series. What the heck kind of game was this? You could move only your main character around, but you weren't directly controlling their actions. Guy was just fighting by himself. You could bring out the menus and give him and his allies orders, including draw their movement lines from point A to point B. So it was extremely strategic, and without these menus, your characters would just fight until they got killed. Random battles were there with avoidable enemies, but every mission you needed to do something entirely different. The dynamics of this game, man. All previous RPGs I had played were simple turn-based, action or tactics. This one was like no other game in existence. And yes, it also had several routes and endings, but also prologues with different protagonists. It was just one of those experiences I'm pretty sure most of you have gone through, playing something completely out of the ordinary, ultra different from anything you've ever played before, and falling in love. That's how much this game blew me away, cause in terms of gameplay, it was pretty much another Chrono Cross experience for me. A game I gave multiple playthroughs in a row until I got every route, character and ending possible. Long live the Grow Lancer series, man. I hope it comes back one day. Alright everybody, like I said at the beginning, strategy RPGs are my favorite genre of video games, so you can already imagine I have a lot of honorable mentions because these games just cannot be left out of this video even though they didn't make it to the list. Definitely gotta start with Devil Survivor 2, obviously. I didn't want the list to be full of Fire Emblem games, so Sacred Stones should have been there, but it wasn't. So yeah. What about the other Girl Dancer games? I'm a huge fan of the series, so yeah. Sakura Wars, strategy RPG / visual novel, but anyway, it's gotta be here. Valkyria Chronicles 4 is just as good as the first one, and it was almost my number 10 actually. The Langrisser remix, phenomenal, needed to be here, the honorable mentions at least. Lost Goddamn Dimension needed to be here as well. And the second Brigandine game released on the PS4 and Switch, definitely. So those are my honorable mentions. I could go on, I know I'm missing other JRPGs that should be here, but enough is enough. These are my 10 games, these are my honorable mentions, that's it. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!